Peace, everyone. How you doing? Welcome to Israel Doctrines Google Hangout. I'm your host, Carl Albert, and you have now entered into our Hangout. And today's title is African Israel, David Mark trip to Ghana. As y'all know, we tried to do this when he was in Ghana, and we was having technical difficulties and everything. So the brother's back to tell us about his trip. How you doing today, bro?
Thank God. How you doing?
Nah, we're getting a little breaking up with this.
No, that's not good. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear
That's
you good. Maybe it just needed to warm up.
It's warmed up. It's warmed up. Don't worry.
All right. So how was it?
It was good. It was 5 days. It was very nice. It was a 3-day conference. I spent the Sabbath down there and came back early Sunday. It was very nice. I was there 16 years ago on a different sort of trip. I was in Ghana as well. But this is very nice. I spent a lot of time in Accra, the capital. It's interesting. There's parts of the city which has gotten a lot of investment from Western world, and you can see it. It's they're building new buildings, office buildings. The airport area is built up. There's a lot of companies. There's at least 3 or 4 Israeli companies down there now that are helping to build the infrastructure of Ghana. There's a new port going in. But then at the same time, you see a lot of third world poverty, which I know people in America and here in Israel, we're just not used to seeing that level of poverty at all. So it's like one kind of first world and third world kind of mixed in together. The city's sewer systems are all open. So you're walking down the street and you see you see the sewers are right next to you. So it's kind of eye-opening, but that's the third world. But it was everybody was very interested in the conference about Israel. They were interested in terms of how Israel and Africa be working together. There were people from Rwanda, Kenya, Uganda, Nigeria, and Ghana all at this conference. So it was very interesting. They were very for them, they saw a big connection between sub-Saharan Africa and Israel, and it seemed to be an ongoing theme of the conference in terms of trying to find a way for both sides to work together, find a way for Africa to be connected to Israel more, business and also religiously.
Oh, okay. So was it any conversation about the Africans that's in America that proclaim themselves to be Israelites? Was it any conversation at the conference about that?
They didn't really touch on that. They don't. The Africans, at least the African Christians, at least at this conference, don't see themselves as Israelites. In that way, at least, they see themselves as obviously Christians, and they feel that as Africans, they have a parallel experience to many Jews around the world in terms of being persecuted and obviously being thrown into a diaspora. They understood that. I pushed on that a lot. In terms of the idea, the African diaspora is very parallel to a lot of the wandering Jew of Europe and of the Middle East. So they felt there was a connection there. But other than that, they didn't really see a connection. They definitely don't feel connected to African Americans. That much I can say. That doesn't come up. I think it's unfortunate. I don't think it's a good thing. I think it's a very unfortunate thing. But I do see there's a definite distinction they make in their minds between the two.
So did these Africans or African Israelites see themselves as grafted into the nation of Israel or sojourning with the nation of Israel? How did they speak on those matters? How do they look at those matters in that part?
Well, they see themselves as Christians, and because of their Christianity, they feel themselves grafted, obviously, into Israel, but which is obviously a dogma of Christianity. But I do think there's a tinge, a taste of the fact that the Africanism that they have plays as much of a role in this connection to Israel as it's subtle, it's subconscious. It doesn't come out unless you really push it. And I was very careful to push it. Not openly. I didn't do it when I was speaking. When I spoke at the end, I did push Pan-Africanism and Zionism as a very parallel sort of movement, and they were very touched by that. But when I pushed certain buttons of theirs that came out. They wouldn't come out openly unless you pushed it. When I said that, a lot of their belief set in Christianity and their style of Christianity is coming from white European missionaries, not traditional to African spiritual viewpoints. And I got them to admit that, and I think that was a very healthy thing for them to admit, because they admitted they were duped at one point in terms of how they look at the Bible, how they look at the idea of keeping the Sabbath versus not keeping the Sabbath. I know you and I have had discussions about that, and how they see they just didn't. They understood it was that they should be keeping it if they were being faithful to the tradition, but they didn't understand like how to do it. And they have an emotional idea that they weren't given the whole story when Christians came and spoke to them. That was very clear, but they don't know a way around it because they don't meet a lot of Jews. So it's an interesting conversation that I had. Almost all of them had that conversation once I pushed the button a little bit more on that.
Okay, so what was the main theme and goal to bring the Africans, the Christian, I don't even know how to use the terminology, but those Africans who had been evangelized to and brought into the Christian comprehension and understanding of, Israel and things of that nature, to bring them more into the grafting in process? What was the theme of this conference?
The conference is actually very interesting. I thought it was a little disjointed because I think they themselves don't really have a clear message yet. They see themselves as the next. They feel Africa is on its way up, which I think is pretty obvious to a lot of people. There's a lot of potential there. The countries are being destabilized in various areas. We can go into that as well, but I think a lot of the Africans, at least the African leaders, religious leaders, see their version of Christianity or their experiential, both as Africans and African Christians, as sort of the future of Christianity, and they should bless Israel because of that. The idea of the whole conference is to bless Israel and to help Israel and Israelis in particular. And if they bless Israel, they'll get blessed themselves. I don't think they were really ready for someone to come, an Israeli to come and talk to them about actually researching the roots of Christianity themselves, which I think when I was having that conversation with them, their eyes opened up. I said, when you were missionized, you weren't given about 200 to 300 years worth of Christian history, which is really connected into its Jewish roots. And you were given a sort of only one point of view. And they all kind of, as I said, they kind of all acknowledge that, but they don't really understand it.
No, there was no conversation about the Coptics and Ethiopia and how that plays a big role in, the Christianity that the world, even though it's not dominant nowadays, but that it played a role in it.
So no, that's the crazy part of the whole thing. Like outside of Ethiopia, the rest of them, especially in West Africa, we're all directly missionized by white missionaries, which were doing that for a particular angle. They weren't doing that to. They weren't doing that to. They weren't doing that to be friends, right? They were doing that to create passivity, so white colonizers can come there. I mean, that's what they were doing. And I told them this, and they understood that. They understand that's the truth. But I think they've, everywhere you go down there. By the way, in Accra, you see a church every few feet. It's these shacks. Not all of Accra has a lot of nice places. Also, I don't want to downplay the city, but the poor areas of Accra, you have every block you have 3 or 4 little churches, and churches. Remember, it doesn't snow there, so you can have a hut.
We understand
church, so
yeah, we had those problems in America. Every few blocks there's a church. So
no, I mean, I understand that, but this is even more than that. That's what's very interesting about this. Like, and they explained it to me that I just broke off and made my own church. Like a guy told me that. Like I was like, it sounds like it happens like every week. And, another guy gets a group of people together, this is fine. But I think because of that, it creates some sort of inbuilt. They're nervous about what happens if they have to undo all this. They've kind of built up their own culture based upon the white man's Christianity, which is kind of sad. But like you said, where's the Coptic Christianity? There's no discussion of that. Their Christianity is coming from white missionaries, and they've now created that and built up this whole culture around it. It's going to be hard for them to kind of break away those layers and get to the truth a little bit. But they're interested. They're where they need to be interested in it.
Okay. So what else went on? Tell us about what happened. Tell us who all was there and what were some of the speeches about, and what was the the goal once again? What was they pushing, and who did you get into a little scrimmage or altercation with or whatever? I know you weren't in agreements with everyone and everything that was there, so tell us about it.
Well, I'm certainly not. I wasn't certainly not. They know my point. They figured out my point of view. Obviously, I'm coming down there as a Jewish Israeli, but they were. I obviously feel very strongly about this partnership, so I wanted to speak to them about it. They wanted me to speak about the Bible's hidden secrets to Jewish business success, which I always thought it was kind of interesting. But so I sort of, I spoke to them about hard work and perseverance and education, and I think at first they were kind of pushed back a little bit, but I think these are natural things, they're very obvious things that we emphasize in the Torah. But I spoke about that, and I spoke about Pan-Africanism, and they none of them really disagreed with me. That's not their nature. There's natures, West Africans and Sub-Saharan Africans don't come out and say, they don't yell or scream, and they culturally speaking, they're very polite people, especially when you have what they viewed me as some sort of celebrity flying from Israel to speak there. So they weren't going to go and have any arguments with me. I did speak to a lot of young, let's call them pastors, for lack of better. They call themselves something different down there. They have apostles, pastors, prophets. They described the differences between all of them. It was very interesting. And I spoke to a lot of young people, and they were all very, very yearning to learn a lot more about their roots. So that was very interesting. The older ones, they took a much more backseat to it. I could see they didn't get into an argument, but I could see that they were a little more reticent. The younger ones were all very interested, all very, very interested about it. They also.
So what type of investments or something that someone like myself, here in America, and would like to get a word over there and stuff? Is the technology over there, capable of allowing someone like myself to, speak with them, send them a DVD or something like that? Do TBN have their satellites over there, since they dealing with Christianity and stuff? Do TBN got their satellites up and stuff where they can get information or TV channels? And tell us about that.
So they certainly do. They certainly have internet there. There's no question about that. They have computers, internet. In the cities, they're definitely going to have some sort of. They have their internet's fine. I mean, I had some issues only because I think I was using the hotel's Wi-Fi was not as good as I thought it wasn't for heavy duty video. But I think they certainly have. I know I have a business partner in Ghana who I met when I was down there, and I know his internet's perfectly fine. So it's not always on mobile. It's not always fine, and that's where the issues are. But I think if they're on landline, it's fine. They have DVDs, especially in the cities. It's fine. The best bet to communicate to them would be through Facebook. I find Facebook video, Facebook. Skype doesn't really. I think Skype's okay. I think Facebook tends to be the best.
Okay, so I'm trying to just figure out ways of evangelizing, because, as you say,
Sure.
Me, myself, you, and other people outside of just Roman Catholicism has another viewpoint on the biblical text and different things, and who Israel is, and how the sojourning of the grafting in process should go and be understood. So I was just asking that for people for future reference, if they wanted to try to utilize and, even send money and, network with them over there, what would be the best way of doing that, seeing no one has an insight on the matter like you?
Yeah, no, first of all, they're definitely, if you want to go and you want to teach them, they're all open to that. They don't see themselves as all knowledgeable. Even the leaders, it's very interesting. You take an American Christian, or European Christian, or even, I would put Jews off to a side for a second, because we're comparing Christians to Christians. There's a sense that one group already understands it all. Whether that's true or not is a completely, is a different matter. But the African Christians don't think that they have all the answers. They were constantly asking questions, and they were constantly wanting to learn more. So for someone like yourself or myself would be accepted to teach there. They would want you to teach there. There'd be no pushback.
Okay, that's
you
nice.
just have to get, find it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice to know. I mean, for people that just don't want to sit on the couch in America and talk over YouTube,
So no, it's. I found their quality. I found the tone and the character traits very, very nice. I thought they're very warm, and they all wanted to speak, and they asked a lot of questions. I remember, what was it, Thursday night? That was interesting. Thursday night, as I said, I'm a business partner and friend, Oscar. He writes for our magazine. He's originally from Biafra, and he had to flee Biafra, and he lives in Ghana. A lot of Biafrans actually fled to Ghana. It's very stable. And he and I walked back and forth a lot to the conference hall. And so he told me after a while I shouldn't walk by. I was walking back by myself. He said, you shouldn't walk by yourself. They might mug you. Because they think you have a lot of money, since they assume white people have a lot of money. Whatever. But one night I decided, I think it was Thursday night, I decided to stay late. I was staying there until 8 p.m. People asked me questions 2 hours straight outside. So they were very, very warm, and they're very interested. So anybody who wants to take up some sort of virtual education should really feel free to. There's a lot of inroads one can make. I know I'm thinking about doing it and thinking about pushing it as well.
Okay, that's interesting. So the Biafra, right? The Igbo, I guess the Igbo was the only that really pushed that terminology. Am I ignorant of something?
No, you're right. Right.
So are they somewhat evangelizing that, some of them may be even of the lost sheep of Israel, or are they just dealing with it from, a spiritual aspect, or that grafting in, a sojourning aspect?
That's a good question. The Biafrans break down a few different categories. They all believe they're from Israel. They all believe they're from the tribe of God. There's no question about it. It's very hard to find a Biafran that doesn't buy into that to a certain extent, whether they think it's a tradition or whether they really, really buy into it. I know Oscar was very open on our podcast about it. He said, we're from the tribe of God. And I was like, I told him yes, and they all kind of, they believe in it. But besides that, break down to about 3 different categories. There's ones that are full-on Christians, like the rest of the West African Christians. And Sunday, they worship on Sundays. They were missionized to do that. Then there's a large group, millions, I think, that they call themselves Sabbatans or Sabbatans, I think. They keep they move the holy day back to Saturday, back to the Sabbath, and they keep that, and they do their best to try to keep the other commandments. They still obviously they still take another Christian doctrine, Jesus is the Messiah, and then there's a small but growing group, about 9,000 Jews, which are which you'd call Old Testament Jews, like myself. They keep they learn the Torah and keep the mitzvot according to rabbinic teaching, rabbinic Jews. So there's about 9,000 and growing of that. About 47. So there's about 3 groups there, right? So that's I didn't meet anybody at the conference like that from any of the 3 groups. And Oscar and I spoke very little about the religious side of things there, but this I know from other people. What I didn't know before this was there's a tremendous amount of expatriates or expat community of Nigerians or Biafrans in Ghana, a large amount. So,
So now explain to the audience, if you could, how the Zionist and Pan-Africanist conversation that you was having went off to him. What exactly were you advocating to him? Because I've been speaking here on this channel a little bit about how Pan-Africanism and Zionism is really one in the same ideology, but not in the same, especially if you're dealing with African Israelites. And I guess you could say European Caucasian looking Jews. I don't know how to be politically correct with that, but and how they both see Northeast Africa as Israel, and how they all want to deal with that plot of land also, as well as the rest of the world, trying to get involved in the politics of that so-called Middle East from a Pan-Africanist and a Zionist point of view.
So it came up in the speech. There's a question and answer session at the end, and I had mentioned a little bit, I think, earlier about in the speech about Pan-Africanism, how it's analogous to Zionism, and they said, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, let's look at Marcus Garvey spoke about being independent. The black man the African needs to be independent of other people, and the only way you can do that is economic independence and not rely on handouts from people helping out Africa. And that to truly be free, you can partner and make business deals with other people. That's not. He wasn't against that. He was against the idea that we need other people to, we just going to sit back and let other people build Africa for us. We need to build Africa for ourselves." And I said, if you look what Theodor Herzl said and the early Zionists said, they said the exact same thing about Israel. They said we can't take handouts from the nations of the world. We have to go over there, drain the swamps, and build up Israel. So I said it's a very similar sort of outlook on the world. Like to really be free and to really have a redemption means we actually have to take upon ourselves some sort of self-reliance, and then the world will respect you. So I think they understood that. So the parallels are very. And in fact, Marcus Garvey writes in one of his speeches that once the Africans would achieve independence, he would feel it in his heart to help out other oppressed peoples, and he listed the Jewish people as one of those groups that he felt that he should go and lend a hand to in terms of also finding they should have independence as well. So it's a very. I told them, and they understood that. It's a very. That's where the parallels. There's more parallels. We can go into it even more. Where if we see that that's Northeast Africa, just because European Jews had a larger intermarriage rate early on in the Roman time, therefore they're more Caucasian looking. It doesn't take away from the fact that they were a northeastern African Semitic tribe, right? So just like there's Jews that look more Persian. So did they always look Persians? Obviously, they didn't. There's more intermixing between that part of Africa, based upon the location, versus let's just say sub-Saharan Africa. So those Africans that were taken into slavery from Ghana, from Nigeria, they were kept as slaves. So they didn't intermingle so much with white Christians in America. But the Jews that were taken out in exile, when there were already Jews living in Italy and France at the time of the Roman exile. Yeah, so we just happen to look more European for that reason. But the fact is we do have this parallel history going on. And it's very clear. And it's not surprising to me that both these Pan-African and early Zionist movements really began to grow at the exact same time. It's not surprising to me. You're talking about two diaspora communities. One really exiled to certain areas, some Africans, or sub-Saharan Africans that were more in America and in other European colonies. And then you have obviously Jews that were thrown out all over the world, or European Jews primarily, or Eastern European Jews. The Middle Eastern Jews weren't really pushed around too much. They kind of stayed where they were as second-class citizens. But the parallels are certainly there, no question
Yeah,
about
I
it.
would agree that the parallels is there. I'm just trying to figure out how they was taking it and how you was delivering it, and it sound like you hitting on some of the good points and stuff. But I'm trying to figure out did they hear about Pan Africanism before you got there, and who was bringing it, and how you know how was their understanding of Pan Africanism?
They didn't get into specifics. I think they understand it as an emotional response. They don't really, I said Marcus Garvey that kind of quieted everybody because I think that was it. They didn't really, they didn't read any of his speeches. They didn't really didn't research it. It's clear. No one responded after that. So I think it's an emotional. Oh, Pan Africans, we're all Africans. I don't think they see it more than that. I think African Americans understand it in a much deeper ideological sense, and I think it's a good thing. It's a healthy thing. I think there's a lot of education that could go back to them on that issue, but they understand it.
Excuse me. What about the African Pan Africans like Kwame Puma and I forget the other one, Torre. Those. I think he was He was from Ghana, right?
Yep.
Kwame Puma or whatever.
Kwame Nkrumah, yeah, he was ahead of his time. There's no question about that. But I don't think they see. They clearly see that they clearly understand it in the light of those people. But I don't think they don't. The ideology doesn't run deep in their veins. There's no question about it. It's easy. I'll explain it in this way. They still see themselves as separate tribes and nations. Let's put it that way. In Ghana, there's English, and I think there are 25 different languages. And so when you have a situation like that, the idea of being a Pan-African is probably my assumption in their everyday life, second to their fact that I'm from this place and you're from you're there, and if it wasn't for English, we wouldn't be speaking the same language. So there's some way African Americans have an advantage in this Pan-African idea because you don't have to worry. There's no separate languages. Unfortunately, because of the situation of the history there, the upside to that is you can see yourselves as Africans. You don't have to see yourselves as separate nations in Africa. I think there is still definitely some differences.
Well, I think that's due to the fact too of the way Pan-Africanism was born, and it was born pretty much in America. A lot of people try to, especially the Kemetic Pan-Africans, I guess would be the proper term. The Kemetic Pan-Africans try to say it started on the African border, this and that. But until we were spread throughout the diaspora, and most definitely over here in this Americas, North and South America, and put under these conditions, which birthed the red, black, and green, and the Booker T. Washington, Marcus Garvey's, and all these different people that advocated this Africa for the Africans. If you already in Africa, you'll say Africa for the Africans. You say I'm home. You know what I'm saying? So I believe that may be the difference that you talking about. Would you agree or disagree?
I agree. I definitely agree with you. I think there's, it's a lot easier to see yourselves as united in a particular cause when you're not home already. When you're already home, okay, now these issues kind of pop up. I mean, look at Rwanda. I mean, now it's an amazing up and coming country, but in the 1990s they were killing each other. They weren't Pan-African then. It's an unfortunate thing. It's not a fortunate thing. It's an unfortunate thing. But that's just the history you're talking about in these places.
Tribal.
Listen, African Americans. For sure, and African Americans can give a lot back in terms of a unified approach. I think over and out. That's always been my sense. And going back there now and spending a solid 5 days in one place, talking to people coming from all these different places in Africa, you definitely get a sense that there's a lot African Americans can kind of give back and inject back into Africa. First of all, now is the time to invest. It's an up and coming continent. There's places that are more stable, less stable, but there's lots of things that can be given back and invested and made money from, and by bringing business there isn't a one-way street. When someone does business in those places, everybody wins. It's not like there's any losers. I'll give you a perfect example.
Go ahead.
There's a lot of arable land in Ghana. A lot of arable land. and they just don't have the means to farm it correctly. They're open about it. They import a lot of vegetables. Someone could go over there and bring a lot of farming technology or invest in, let's just say Israeli agricultural technology, and they could begin to actually, produce jobs, produce their own vegetables, and not depend on imports. That's just one example. So everybody makes money and everybody wins.
So
there's so much potential that can happen.
let's talk about this type of thing, because tonight at 6, well, in a couple hours, I was going to deal with churchonomics, and deal with the economic aspect of the church and how the church is really was supposed to be the welfare system of, the believers, the Israelites, the so on and so forth. Because in dealing with the New Testament part of the paradigm of the narrative, that the church started in the wilderness with the mixed multitude that, you find, me, and I guess you speak on it. I never really heard you speak about the mixed multitude, but, I know Harry Rosenberg speaks on it and stuff. So it says that's where the church started. And we know that right after that, in the wilderness and coming out of the wilderness, coming into the promised land, they was given laws, statutes, and commandments to deal with tithes and offerings and, all these vegetables and things, as you say, in agriculture and farming. So how do you see that, I guess you could say, Israelnomics, churchnomics, going down on the African plain like that in a place like Ghana and stuff? Because like I said, you have a lot of people over here, as you well know, doing the debate time and stuff, and people talking. You have the Kemetic people or the Nile Valley people with their perspectives, and they trying to go back to Africa. And if they do go, they probably advocate that more than anything. But you also have the Hebrew Israelites, or the Israelites that, are RBG or Pan-Africanist in mindset, and they might want to do some of these things and have some churchonomics or Israelnomics going on over there in Ghana. So that's why I was asking about the evangelize. And so if you can try to help some of these brothers out, some of them may take your advice. Some of them may say you as a European Jew and don't want to hear nothing you say. But if you willing to share something, please do.
I think it's open. I think, I'll give you an example. A chief offered my business partner an opportunity to lease for free 100 of, what was it, equivalent to 500 acres, I think, in the Volta region of Ghana. Yeah, probably we'd have to give him some money or give a lot of the villagers jobs on the plot of land, which I'd be more than happy to do. There's a lot of giving you can do when you're setting these kinds of things up there, and it just helps. As I said, that's a form of it says when you teach. If you teach a person how to fish, it's much better. That's the ultimate charity versus just giving them money. So going and building an agricultural business on these large tracts of land, and not treating it like you're just taking, no, you're building it up, and you're not actually building up their economy. Everybody, as I said, everybody wins, and you're actually giving them something they need, and they can learn from. And there's no reason, there's no reason why people shouldn't be, if they care about Africa, if they care about helping people out, there's no reason why people shouldn't do that.
So how much stuff over there is, in a sense, open source and in a way where, as I was saying, we can tie into the internet over there, and we can actually see what's going on and have a more, virtual relationship? Because feet on the ground is a different thing, and it's probably a great thing, but a lot of people are not going to want to get up and go over
Sure.
there. Like you said, it's a third world like environment in some cases and stuff. So what kind of opportunities, I guess, is for that, and what type of opportunities for somebody to just go and teach plain old English and how to read and write those skills, so they can communicate back with us and we can communicate with them on a more global level. So
yeah, they like Facebook a lot. I've been finding Facebook or WhatsApp, they're constantly on, and you can create a community just by doing that. I know we've done the Israel Africa Hub. We have a tremendous amount of people talking to us all the time, and so people can easily just go on Facebook. They can join Israel Africa Hub on our Facebook group, and they can find a lot of Africans on there. And we'd have no problem with people trying to use that as a stepping stone into a broader relationship with a variety of Africans. The best way, I think, is an open source sort of mentality where, okay, you don't know what, you have to kind of build relationships first, find out what they're looking for, and then let it roll from there.
So, and what do you find in your your close or distant quarters with these people? As you say, trade, but like contracts and stuff. How do that work from your knowledge? How do that work when dealing with them? And if you have a problem with some type of agreement, what type of lawyers or judges or intermediary, what I'm saying, people over there to deal with those type of things?
Well, thankfully I have somebody on the ground that I trust. So our reality is, something needs to be happening in Ghana, he'll take care of it. If more often than not, the way we do things is we kind of run the money. It's still third world. There's a lot of corruption, not necessarily with the common person there, but the government. There's a lot of corruption in the government there. And Ghana is one of the better ones, but you got to grease people's wheels. You have to know who to talk to. The best thing to do is have somebody who has what to lose, who's on the ground. If it's Ghanaian, if it's Rwandan, or somebody from the outside has been there so many years, they greased all the wheels for you. That's really. But there's a lot of wheel greasing. There's no question about it. It's gotten better in Ghana. Rwanda has gotten much better. But better meaning like, okay, so you don't get asked for money every 5 seconds, but you have to know who to grease. It's nothing like it. Listen, I'll give you a story. I mean, I got off the plane. I know the exchange rate between the CD and the shekel is almost exact. So I knew that. I went to exchange place. They didn't know what I was talking about, and they gave me half of what I wanted. Yeah, so then I found out. I went to the conference. What was that about? They said they saw you were white and they want to take your money. It was direct. It was like very, very like, yeah, okay, fine, whatever. I didn't lose that much money. I mean, at the end of the day, I didn't change all my money, but like, that's a taste of it, right? So like, you have to go in there, understanding you might lose some money. You also have to go in, if you can build up a relationship with people before you go or deal, whatever you're dealing with, build up a solid relationship. Religious leaders are better to deal with. I tell you, the religious are much better to deal with. They're all good people. They're not going to rip you off, and let them grease the wheels for you. That's the best. That's the best piece of advice I can give. To go there blind, you're going to lose your money.
Yeah, that's great. So in asking that question, I was saying, was it best to really try to do business, or is it best to just, like you said, find somebody over there that really truly honest and things of that nature and doing what they need to do, and just help them do what they need to do instead of trying to profit yourself from it? Just make sure that they doing what they do, and that's Pan-Africanism, helping that person build up where they at, and not really trying to reap some benefits. That's why I kind of asked that, because in strategizing in a help process, it's either you trying to benefit or you just trying to help. So I appreciate the information. I think a lot of people that's afraid to talk and ask you questions or talk, with a European Jew, I'm trying to do my best to think like them and ask some questions and stuff, as situation.
For sure. I mean, listen, everybody wins when you try to help. That's the way I look at it. You're like, I think, if you're trying to go in there to make a buck, you're gonna lose. You're not gonna win, because it's not that kind of environment. And number two, I don't think that's how you build up trust anyway. I think you're gonna have to deal with people on their home turf. It's their country, and the idea is to help at the end of the day. And the idea is, everybody wins when you help. There's no question about it. The people that go in these places to try to make a quick buck, they don't make any quick bucks. They lose their shirt and no one looks at them. They eventually get into trouble.
Yeah, yeah. Because, as we were speaking, the tribal wars is going on, and I guess the warlords, if it's any over there, and it's always one or two that, pretty much the head honcho, they not going to let you come in with your politics.
Nope.
So, well, I don't know how much more you got. Tell the people about your
I might have to head out shortly. It's getting late, but go on.
Yeah, tell the people about your show and what your show about. A lot of people may not know from this platform exactly who you are, and the brand that you push and what it's all about. So
we run a few different things. We have a magazine called Israel Rising. I think we now almost have 34,000 Facebook followers. Half of them are in Africa, some are in India, America. We push a different avant-garde style of pro-Israel advocacy, which is Israel should align itself with the developing world. And Israel, as a former British colony, has much more in common with other former British colonies, i.e. Africa, India. And we try to push ideas along those lines. Obviously, we're pro-Israel, so we push pro-Israel stories. But we have a growing following. And we also have a platform called Israel Africa Hub, which acts as a bridge between Israeli startups, or Israeli firms, and their African counterparts or African government officials that are looking to bridge the two. Israeli innovation, where it can help spark African development. And then lastly, we're about to launch a learning platform, a Torah-based learning platform called World Return, that's directly aimed at African regions, giving them the roots, more of the roots to their Christianity if they're Christians, or roots to their Judaism if they're Judaism. Very simple courses, pay per course, $10, $15, $20 per course. We're launching that in about a month. So that's where we're at.
Okay. And I mean, I guess we could close out with that. I just wanted to give you opportunity to speak again and give people opportunity to find out where you at, because I look at your program and I don't watch it all because I'm so busy with the tribal wars here in America. The East Coast, West Coast, North, South. Different theological arms of the liberation movement over here. So I don't get a chance to tune in all the time, but for those that may have more of an interest in what you're talking about over there, or more, I guess, an interest, they go over there and see that you're talking about things, and I'm stuck on this paradigm that I'm in, then, that's a good place for them to go. Tell them about your advocacy for the African.
Mixed into all of this, we actually have done something I think no other pro-Israel online magazine has done. That's for sure. We've incorporated actual Biafran writers into it, and we feel they feel and we feel there's a lot of brotherly connections between the two areas, and which I found it wonderful that they're actually writing as an extension of Israel in Biafra for our magazine. So they're writing about what's going on the ground. I'm about to talk to another one tonight. Hopefully he'll start writing for us. I feel there's a lot of correlations, and I've spoken on Radio Biafra about 25, 30 minutes, I think a few weeks ago. I'm in touch with some of the highest leaders in the pro-Biafra movement, and they're in exile. So I'm very well aware of what's going on. I try to push it as much as possible. It's very important for people to understand, if they're not clued in, that basically there's open genocide going on in Biafra, and their leader Nnamdi Kanu, which is he's a tremendous individual, an amazing person. He was put in jail unlawfully by Muhammad Buhari, who is the president of Nigeria. He was elected. I don't know how he's elected, but he's elected, and he is definitely one head case. He's actually took a fast-growing economy and basically destroyed it in about a year. And it's clear he's taking money from it. He's smash the Biafrans. Biafra is an area in southeast Nigeria, which is really should be its own country. I think by law it should be its own country by now. In 1914, the British, like they did around the world, took 3 different countries and put them together and made Nigeria. There's Hausa, Lagos colony in the west, and then in the southeast, Biafra. And they took all of them together and they put them together probably on purpose to force conflict and infighting and destruction. And the British law, the contract between the 3 countries being Nigeria was finished in 2014. It's a 100-year contract. And so really by international law, there should not be a Nigeria right now. There should be 3 countries. There should be Lagos colony, which is the west, where the Yoruba are, and the north is Hausa, which is where the Fulani and the Hausa are like these militant Muslims. And the southeast is Biafra. So they should all be 3 separate countries. Muhammad Buhari knows that if Biafra goes, Nigeria is finished. So that's what's going on. So people really should take if they can petition the White House to really get involved. I understand that Obama, I think, is very pro-Buhari, very pro-Muhammad Buhari. He's thrown weapons at him, where Israel is not openly siding Biafra, but there would be much more. They did in the late 1960s, the last time there was a war. So the underlying theory would be if there's another conflict, that obviously Israel would step in, at least behind the scenes, covertly, not overtly, like they did in South Sudan. They would support Biafra and Biafran independence. So I'm very much pro this. I speak about this a lot, and I push it as much as I can.
And who you say you was in collaborations with? What's the program you say you spoke on?
I spoke on Radio Biafra, which is basically Biafra's radio station in exile. It's I think it's over in 88 countries. Biafrans are in exile in a lot of different countries. They're Igbo. This is the Igbo people make up most of Biafra. They're some of the most successful African expats in the globe, hands down. So I'm in touch with the number 4 in the whole organization, called the International People of the Indigenous People of Biafra Movement, IPOB. So they need help. They need help petitioning people. If people want to support an independent Africa, a Africa free of neocolonialism and Western influence, supporting a free Biafra is the first step. Just like supporting a free South Sudan. So free Biafra, which would really set back neocolonialist influence in the area. I think African Americans and African expats would do well to support that cause.
Let me ask you this. I'm just interested, and we can close out after this. What about,
Sure.
Marriages between African Americans and them, and trying to amalgamate the two back together with certain Africans over there and stuff and things of that nature? Because I'm not one that's super interested, but I see pictures and stuff, and I know, they be trying to, I guess Facebook have relations and stuff, or talk to people, or look for husbands and wives like that. People do that over Facebook also. But what would be the chances of that in your perspective? Because even with that, if a guy go over there and he's not married or whatever, and he's over there in that third world country, he's gonna need a mate. So have you seen been privy to seeing those type of relationships grow over there, or heard of anything of that nature?
I haven't seen it. It has happened. I mean, there's definitely people that they've moved back. They've moved over there. I think I was just reading about it online, where a Jamaican woman just married a prince in Nigeria. So it does happen. I'd be wary as an African American man and a African woman would like to marry him. You would have to ask 2 or 3 questions of why. Unless they're coming from an affluent family, they might be unfortunately interested in finding a ladder up out of poverty.
Right.
I'm not saying that in every case. I'm saying I'd be worried. I was always like anything else in the world. You always have to, check before you go ahead. But no, listen. I mean, why not? It's hey, listen. It happened in Liberia. It happened in Liberia. No, like that's exactly how the Liberians went back as a group, and then after a while they blended in. So.
Well, you got these guys over here. They deal with polygamy, this, that, and everything else. So they might have if they travel back and forth, they might want one in Ghana and one in America. You never know. So I'm just, like I said, I'm trying to get in the mind of other people. I'm not questions for myself,
Sure.
but they may, have those questions. And I would love if you, like you said, if you in touch with some of these people, if they would like to come on and plead their cause, to my subscribers or my viewership. I mean,
Sure.
they come on anytime and plead for causes as such as dealing with the what you call it when you're on foreign land, and the embassy for the British embassy or whoever that's over here in America that needs to be talked to and dealt with. Because I know there's been some rallies and stuff dealing with some things in Washington. That's how I first started learning about Biafra. You know what I'm saying? I was ignorant to them, but I started watching YouTube and looking at the RBG flags, and I always seen that flag and was like, well, who is that? And I learned more about them. So I would love to have some of them on so they can talk to my audience and talk to the people and see exactly if they can shake the world up and bring a vibration, throughout the diaspora that's needed, because if we're going to deal with Ezekiel 37, all the bones got to, come together and wake up and receive that breath of life again. So,
Please God.
So with that said, I appreciate it, man. The updates and the conversation and, the little insight that you have on everything. Hopefully the audience appreciate it and everything. And we'll talk again when you get some time and stuff. And like I said, let the other brothers and sisters know that the opportunity is always here. It's one thing I must say, and I'm gone for sure after this. I need somebody to talk about the death of the sister from Demona. You know what I'm talking about? The sister that was in the military and they said she committed suicide. And then you have people saying, she was killed and things of that nature. You're not aware of it?
No,
I'll send you the information on Facebook.
You sent me definitely.
Yeah. So if nothing else, I'm putting it out there for the people and making you aware of it. And I'm looking for somebody to speak on it. So in due time, hopefully we get somebody to deal with that and update us on that situation. But I'll send you the information for sure. Because maybe
I'll look into it.
Yeah, maybe you could deal with something a little bit over there and wake your audience up to it, on Israel Rising. So with that said, I appreciate you for coming through once again. Peace.
All right. Peace, brother.
All right, y'all. We out.